Alright everyone, Josh on this video. I want to discuss non-destructive versus destructive modeling. Now it's a pretty simple concept and we're going to demonstrate it right now. We'll use a cube as usual. Maybe turn on the screencast key so you can see what I'm pressing. This add-on is super buggy. Hopefully it gets fixed soon. Okay, anyways, basic cube as usual. So I'm going to use the box cutter add-on just to make these Boolean cuts a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to cut through here. Just add a few different ones, nothing crazy. Maybe add in one more with a circle. Okay, so what we have here are a few different Boolean cuts. You can see we have 4 different Booleans for all 4 of these cuts. Now, if you're using HardOps, you also see this option up here called destructive and non-destructive, and by default it's on non-destructive. So if we type into edit mode, you're going to see that we don't have access to any of the underlying geometry that we see here in object mode. And that's because although these Booleans are here visually, they're not there on the geometry level, and they actually won't ever show up until we apply the Booleans over here in the modifier stack. So right now we're working non-destructively, and this is super useful because I can adjust the position of these Booleans at any point in time. So say maybe I wanted to move this corner a little bit, I could just go to mod scroll and find my Boolean cut, and I could readjust it, maybe scale it, and then just hide it. So since we're working non-destructively, it's super easy to be more versatile and move things around. Okay, so what will happen if we apply all these Booleans? Or actually, you know what, let's go ahead and apply maybe just the corner one, and we'll leave the other ones for better demo purposes. So which one was the one for the corner? It looks like it was cutter 001. So I'm going to apply this second Boolean here, and you can ignore that message since we're only working with bools here. So if we tap into edit mode, you're going to see that once we apply the modifier, this geo now becomes accessible. So now we've went destructive. We have quote unquote destroyed the modifier here. It is gone, it's applied. But now the downside, or not necessarily a downside, but the other side of things is that we now have access to this underlying geometry here. Now in more complex models, there's going to be times you have to go destructive. You absolutely need to apply the Booleans simply to access the underlying geometry, to maybe clean up the topology, or to fix shading issues. Whatever that may be, you're going to be going destructive all the time. But I personally don't like going destructive if I can avoid it. Reason being is because we don't really have a need to apply this Boolean here. It's not anything we have to really clean up or deal with any shading, so there wasn't really a point in applying it. So now if I want to move this Boolean anywhere else, it's a lot harder because now I have to go in here and select the geometry and maybe deselect this, and I just have to do all sorts of manual adjustments. And even still, it's not going to work as well as we would have expected because it's you can see how it's kind of pulling the geometry with it. We can't do as many changes as we were able to do with the Boolean. So in my opinion, if you don't have a reason to apply your Booleans, simply don't. It's just going to give you more headaches in the future and you're not going to be able to adjust things. And as you can see, these other guys, we don't really have a need to apply them, so if there's any point I want to go in here and make changes, I can just access the cutter and move it. I can go to really any of these and just move it around. And you can see at any point in time, I have the ability to change the positioning of these Boolean cuts. Now here's a prime example of when you might want to go destructive. You can see that we have a cylindrical cut in this curvature here. Produces really bad shading. And you can do a few things to kind of help isolate the geometry. You can perhaps go in here and add in some edge loops in edit mode and just kind of tighten up that geo. Maybe slide this a bit closer. You can kind of see that most of this shading, if I turn off wireframe, is now pretty constrained, but it's still very visible. So usually in situations like this, there's no real way to completely get rid of it without going destructive. So in an example like this, usually what I would do is I would just bite the bullet and then I would just apply the Boolean modifier and then really get in here and start cleaning things up. So I could perhaps turn on auto merge and then just start kind of merging the near miss vertices, doing really whatever I can to kind of clean up the geo because right now the geometry is yelling at us via shading and artifacts and things like that. So yeah, usually sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and go in here and just start cleaning things up manually. So a situation like this, after a little bit of manual cleanup, you can fix the shading pretty easily, looks a lot nicer. And there's just simply no way I would have been able to do something like this had I not went destructive. So there are times you need to go destructive to clean up shading, to kind of make the topology more oriented, whatever that may be. But if you can avoid going destructive, I would definitely recommend doing that. And then, you know, what I could do is drop in some extra box cuts here, and here I don't even need to go destructive. There's no reason to, because, you know, it's not affecting the shading and there's nothing that really needs to be cleaned up, so I might as well leave it. So that's basically a quick overview of non-destructive versus destructive. It's a very simple concept, so if you understood everything in this video, you'll be good to go.